so I'm going to be reading it on my phone. So, as Chris said, I am Ethan Cruikshank, at least I believe I am, and I am a junior at Wooten High School, which essentially means that this is the first time that I've been anywhere but school or home in at least a week. So, joking a little bit, I've always seen myself as something of a storyteller, which I know the technical term is pathological liar, but storyteller I think sounds a little bit better. So anyway, Chris asked me a while back whether I would be willing to give a faith statement today. And at the time, I was thinking, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds like a great idea. And about 5 minutes later, I realized I had absolutely no idea how I was going to approach this. So, after procrastinating for a long while, I decided to sit down and try and write one out. It didn't go well. So 3 drafts and Cards in the Mountain Dew later, I decided that I should do what came natural to me. Procrastinate. Wait, no, I mean tell a story. Naturally, this would have to be a story about my faith. And if we're going to be starting there, we have to start in a small Catholic church named St. Raphael's. Now, I use the word small here very loosely. It's about 5 or 6 times, maybe more, the size of Prince of Peace here. But the thing is that was my starting point, and it was there that I received a thorough education in the proper kneeling etiquette, the proper way to not pay attention to a sermon, which I believe they call a homily, and the proper way to have a sore back while sitting in those wooden pews. If you do not believe me, truly, God is with us here because we have cushioned chairs. About 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's coming more on the 5-year mark now, but I can't tell time anymore. My family decided that it was time for a change, and so we came here. Of course, it just so happened that I was already in the Catholic confirmation class at the time, so for a while there I was taking 2 confirmation classes at once, the Lutheran one and then the next day the Catholic one. And these 2 classes unerringly stuck to the same course. So I always was able to somehow get all the answers right on the Catholic one. I had no idea why. I left the Catholic one a little before we got into the saints, so I don't know exactly why St. Raphael's was so special. But I left it for here because I just felt such a sense of welcoming here. Pastor Stephen, at the time, Pastor Sarah, really made me feel so much more at home here at Prince of Peace than those Catholic priests ever really were able to. I felt free here, more encouraged to seek out different theologies and to really think for myself. And it was here that towards the end of my confirmation time that I first encountered the triquetra, which is an old Celtic symbol that was later turned into a symbol for the Holy Trinity. And for me, this symbol was it was almost exotic. And it was refreshing because it was a change from all the typical symbols that you see in Christian theology, the cross, the lamb, that sort of thing. But more importantly, it felt very personal because it was a tie to my Catholic roots. Because it had that sainthood story with it. It was the symbol that St. Patrick sort of transformed from being this old Celtic symbol to being this new Christian symbol. However, so after my confirmation though, the triquetra sort of took a backseat. I mean, it was on my confirmation banner and all that stuff, but school was starting to pick up again, and they were really pushing the limits of the 8th Amendment. So the triquetra didn't. So it wasn't until work camp that I really saw the triquetra. And work camp was one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life because it was a whole week of being able to meet people from all these different walks of life, all these different theological perspectives and different faith stories that ranged from being incredibly tragic to incredibly comedic. But it was also at work camp that we passed out these necklaces that had a bronze triquetra pendant and a little bit of string for the rest of it. And so throughout the week we passed them out to the different people that we met at work camp. And on the last day, after I managed to get rid of all of mine, I say get rid because if you took your eyes off them for more than a second, they wound up getting all tangled up with each other, and so you had to spend at least 30 or so minutes untangling them. So after I got all of them gone, we pack up and we're ready to leave. I get in the car, and there, on the floor of the car, is one last pendant. So obviously this is a little bit of providence right here. I just can't get away from this thing. So I pick it up and I put it in my pocket for later. And that night I decide, you know what? I need a change. So I take off the cross pendant from my cross, and I put on the little triquetrum medallion, which I've been wearing ever since. And what really hits home for me about the triquetra, about this one in particular, is that it's heavy. And it reminds me so much of God's presence in my life. And not only that, it has part of the prayer of St. Patrick. Now the whole prayer of St. Patrick is long and is incredibly beautiful, and you could not fit it onto this if you tried to. So I'd like to read it to you all. I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of the sun, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of the wind, depth of the sea, stability of the earth, firmness of the rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak for me, God's hand to guard me, God's way to protect me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me, God's host to save me, afar and near, alone or in multitude. Christ shield me today against wounding, Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I stand up, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in the eye that sees me, Christ in the ear that hears me. I arise today through the mighty strength of the Lord of creation. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Carter. For those of you who don't know me, I think I know most of you or have seen your faces. So I'm the pastor's oldest son, so theoretically I should have the preaching gene. You know, I should be set, but we'll see. Our service is all right, I think. So when Chris and my mom asked me to do the sermon for Youth Sunday, they weren't very specific about it, so I had a little bit of a hard time writing. So they gave me the readings, which were a little bit obscure, so I didn't really have much to write about with that. So they told me that I could work on something with my faith, like you do when you get confirmed, to do a faith statement. And I decided that I was going to talk about prayer, and what prayer means to me. And for a lot of us, I think prayer is something that we normally do before dinner and at church. And that's pretty much mostly it, at least for me. So before dinner, you know, I'll do a small bit on how thankful I am for my food before I devour it. And at church, I just echo what's written in the bulletin. And that's fine for me. But I think real prayer and a real conversation with God is a lot harder. I think for a lot of us it's a lot harder. And even if you can find the words to say to God, what if you feel like He's not listening? So I am not a... prayer makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So when I pray, I am often a little bit... I'm rushing through it, I'm trying to get it over with, because I don't want to be in that vulnerable state for a long period of time. And a lot of people really like prayer. It really works for them. It's how they connect to God. But for me, I don't connect to God as much, talking to Him with my hands folded. For me, it's writing. I like to write a lot, whether it's for school or something just recreational. I like to write. I feel like I'm in the zone, you know. I'm in something more than myself, and I like that a lot. For other people, it might be running or fishing or doing whatever, and that's how you get your God for the day. But I think that prayer can come in many forms, and that it's not restricted to traditional prayer. And so I think prayer, to wrap this up, is taking an active role in connecting with God. I think that it's important to take an active role in where God is bringing you, and I think that's what prayer is. And I think that oftentimes God is a little bit loosey-goosey in what's sort of going on in the earth world. Because a lot of times I sort of feel like, oh, but where's God in this situation? And it's a little bit hard to see where He is. But I think that prayer is a big exception to that, because even if you're looking for where God is in your life, or how you can hear what He's trying to tell you, He'll come looking for you, and He'll find you. And I think that prayer for me is allowing myself to be in a position where I can be found by God. So, to wrap it up, even if you're not praying, just pray.